Cathy Freeman was born on February 16, 1973, in Mackay, Queensland, Australia, and her journey from a young Aboriginal girl growing up in a country marked by deep divisions to one of the most iconic Olympians in history is a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of dreams. She was the daughter of Norman Freeman and Cecilia Barber, and from the beginning, Cathy's life was shaped by both hardship and hope. Her family was part of the Kuku-Yalanji people of far north Queensland, and her childhood was filled with the challenges that many Indigenous Australians faced, including poverty, racism, and limited opportunities. Yet amid those struggles, Cathy discovered a gift that would eventually take her to the world stage, an extraordinary talent for running. Even as a young girl, she seemed to glide across the ground with effortless speed, as if she were born to sprint. She often raced barefoot against boys in her neighborhood, outrunning them with ease, her laughter mixing with the pounding of her feet against the dusty ground. Her grandmother and mother encouraged her to believe that her talent could carry her far, telling her that she was destined for something great, even when the world around her often seemed to say otherwise. Cathy's path toward athletics became clearer when she entered school competitions and stunned teachers and classmates with her natural ability. She won races with such dominance that coaches began to take notice, and by the age of 16, she had already begun training seriously. But her ascent was not easy. As an Aboriginal athlete, she often encountered prejudice, and the road was lined with obstacles beyond the track. Still, she pressed forward with determination, driven not just by personal ambition but by a desire to represent her people on a stage where they had long been excluded. In 1990, at only 16 years old, Cathy made history by being selected for the Commonwealth Games in Auckland, New Zealand, where she became part of the 4x 100-metre relay team. When the Australian team crossed the line first, Cathy Freeman became the first Indigenous Australian woman to win a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. She was still just a teenager, yet she had already broken a barrier that carried deep symbolic meaning. For her, the victory was thrilling. For her community, it was monumental, a sign that an Aboriginal woman could stand tall on the world stage and claim victory for her country. After that early breakthrough, Cathy's career began to accelerate. She continued to train relentlessly, sharpening her technique and building the strength and stamina that would make her one of the most dominant 400-metre runners of her generation. In 1994, she returned to the Commonwealth Games in Victoria, Canada, and her performance electrified the athletics world. She won gold in both the 200-metre and 400-metre events, cementing her status as one of the fastest women alive. But what made those victories even more memorable was her decision to carry both the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag during her victory lap. The gesture was bold, unapologetic, and profoundly meaningful. At the time, it was not officially allowed, and Cathy received criticism from some quarters for making a political statement at a sporting event. Yet to her and to countless Indigenous Australians, it was not about politics, it was about identity, pride, and visibility. By holding those two flags together, Cathy declared that she was both proudly Aboriginal and proudly Australian, and she invited the world to see her whole identity, not just part of it. That moment ignited conversations across the nation about reconciliation, belonging, and the place of Indigenous people in Australia's story. Her rise continued onto the global stage at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, where Cathy entered as one of the favorites in the 400 meters. The race was tense, filled with the world's best sprinters, and when the gun fired, Cathy surged forward with her characteristic smooth stride. She ran with grace and power, and as she approached the final stretch, the roar of the crowd grew louder. She finished second, winning the silver medal behind French runner Marie-José Pérec. For some athletes, silver might have felt like disappointment, but for Cathy, it was both a triumph and a stepping stone. She had become the first Aboriginal Australian to win an Olympic track medal, and her performance only fueled her hunger for more. The image of her standing on the podium in Atlanta, wrapped in both the Aboriginal and Australian flags once again, became iconic, a symbol of pride and unity that resonated far beyond sport. She returned home a hero, celebrated not only for her speed but for the dignity and strength with which she carried her identity. Yet deep inside, Cathy knew that her ultimate test still lay ahead, one that would come 4 years later on home soil in Sydney, in front of the world, under the weight of unimaginable expectations. By the late 1990s, Cathy Freeman was no longer just a rising star, she was the face of Australian athletics, and with the 2000 Sydney Olympics approaching, she found herself at the centre of a nation's hopes and dreams. She continued to dominate the 400 metres on the international circuit, collecting victories at World Championships and consistently ranking among the fastest women in the world. In 1997, she captured gold at the World Championships in Athens, confirming her status as the reigning queen of the event. Her smooth, floating stride made the grueling one-lap race look deceptively easy, but behind that effortlessly was relentless training, discipline, and mental focus. Cathy knew that every step she took was about more than her own ambition, it was about representing her community, about inspiring Indigenous children who rarely saw themselves reflected in the world of global sport, and about proving that reconciliation and unity could be symbolized through her running. The pressure grew with every victory, and with it came the heavy burden of expectation. By the time the calendar turned to 2000, the Australian media, the public, and the government had all placed Cathy Freeman at the very heart of the Sydney Games. She wasn't just another athlete, she was expected to carry the weight of a nation. The organisers of the Sydney Olympics made a bold and historic decision. Cathy Freeman would light the Olympic cauldron during the opening ceremony. The moment was shrouded in secrecy until it happened, and when she stepped into the stadium on September 15, 2000, carrying the Olympic torch, the world was stunned. Dressed in a white bodysuit, Cathy walked across a pool of water, climbed the steps, and lit the flame that rose high above the stadium. It was an image broadcast to billions, and it instantly became one of the most iconic moments in Olympic history. The symbolism was profound. An Aboriginal woman, descended from a people who had been marginalised and silenced for generations, now stood as the central figure of Australia's most celebrated sporting event. The crowd erupted, tears filled countless eyes, and the flame she lit was more than fire, it was hope, unity, and recognition. Cathy herself later admitted she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders that night, but she carried it with grace, becoming not just a sportswoman but a symbol of national identity and reconciliation. After the opening ceremony, Cathy still had to do what she had trained for all her life, race the 400 meters. And it was in that race, scheduled for September 25, that the expectations reached their peak. 4 years, newspapers had speculated, fans had debated, and opponents had strategized, all waiting for this moment. Could Cathy Freeman, under the crushing weight of expectation and the glare of the home crowd, deliver? The lead-up to the race was intense. Cathy avoided much of the media, choosing instead to focus inward, leaning on her quiet strength and her years of preparation. The stadium was packed with 112,000 spectators, the largest crowd ever to watch an athletics event in Olympic history, and millions more tuned in around the globe. When Cathy stepped onto the track for the final, wearing her now famous green and gold full bodysuit, the roar was deafening. The air was electric with anticipation, every eye fixed on lane 6, where she crouched at the starting blocks. She later described the moment as surreal, as if time slowed down and the enormity of it all pressed down upon her. When the starter's gun fired, Cathy burst forward with controlled power, settling into her smooth rhythm around the first bend. Her competitors, Jamaica's Lorraine Graham, Britain's Catherine Merry, and Nigeria's Falalat Ogunkoya were formidable, but Cathy remained calm, her stride steady, her eyes fixed ahead. As they entered the final straight, the stadium seemed to hold its breath. Cathy surged, her long strides eating up the track, her body carrying not just her own weight but the hopes of millions. With each step, the roar of the crowd grew louder until it was a wall of sound, shaking the stadium to its core. And then it was over. Cathy Freeman crossed the finish line first, her arms outstretched, her face etched with exhaustion and disbelief. She had won Olympic gold. The stadium erupted in thunderous celebration, and Cathy stood on the track, wrapped in both the Australian and Aboriginal flags, the image burned into history. For many, it was the defining moment of the Sydney Olympics, a race that transcended sport and became a symbol of pride, reconciliation, and possibility. The victory was more than just a personal triumph, it was a moment of healing and acknowledgement for Indigenous Australians. Cathy's gold medal run united a country, if only for a moment, in celebration of both excellence and identity. The next day, newspapers declared it the race of the century, and around the world, people spoke of the young Aboriginal woman who had conquered the pressure of a lifetime to deliver on the biggest stage of all. For Cathy, the relief was immense. Years of training, sacrifice, and scrutiny had culminated in a few unforgettable seconds. Standing on the podium as the national anthem played, she felt an overwhelming mix of pride, exhaustion, and gratitude. She had carried the weight of expectation and transformed it into triumph, creating one of the most iconic moments in Australian history. Yet even in victory, Cathy remained humble, insisting that she had simply done her job as an athlete. But to millions, she had done far more than that. She had lit a path of possibility for generations to come. After her historic gold medal win at the Sydney Olympics, Cathy Freeman became more than just an athlete, she became a symbol of hope, reconciliation, and national pride. Her achievement was celebrated not only in Australia but across the world, and for many, it represented a turning point in the recognition of Indigenous Australians' contributions to the nation. Yet Cathy's life after Sydney was not about resting on her laurels. She continued to compete at the highest levels, participating in the 2001 World Championships in Edmonton, where she again demonstrated her dominance in the 400 meters. Despite the spotlight and the pressures of fame, she maintained her focus, discipline, and humility, refusing to let celebrity distract her from the love of running that had carried her from a young girl racing barefoot in Mackay to the pinnacle of Olympic glory. Each race was a continuation of her story, an opportunity to honor her heritage and inspire others to pursue excellence no matter the obstacles they faced. Beyond the track, Cathy used her platform to advocate for Indigenous rights, education, and social inclusion. She understood that her influence could extend far beyond sport, and she became an ambassador for numerous programs aimed at empowering young Aboriginal Australians. Cathy frequently spoke about the importance of perseverance, the need to embrace identity, and the power of sport to unite communities. Her openness about her experiences, the struggles, the doubts, and the triumphs helped break down stereotypes and encouraged young people to believe that they could achieve greatness while staying true to who they were. Her work in the community was a reflection of the same discipline and dedication she displayed as an athlete. She approached it with seriousness, compassion, and unwavering commitment. She also inspired a generation of female athletes, demonstrating that women could excel in sports traditionally dominated by male attention, while also using their visibility to effect positive social change. In 2002, Cathy made the difficult decision to retire from competitive athletics, choosing to step away from the track at a time when she could still perform at a world-class level. The announcement was met with widespread admiration and respect, as the nation reflected on her extraordinary career and the indelible mark she had left on sport and society. Her retirement was not the end of her influence. Instead, it marked a transition to a new chapter, one focused on mentorship, advocacy, and inspiring future generations. She traveled across Australia and abroad, sharing her story with schools, organizations, and communities, emphasizing the lessons of resilience, focus, and self-belief that had carried her through a life of challenge and achievement. Cathy consistently highlighted that her journey had never been about medals alone but about representing her people, carrying forward the pride of her heritage, and demonstrating that determination and integrity could overcome adversity. Her story became a beacon, particularly for Indigenous youth, many of whom saw in her example that opportunity and success were attainable, even against a backdrop of historical and systemic challenges. Cathy's legacy continued to grow over the years through recognition and honors. She was awarded the Australian of the Year in 1998, long before her Olympic gold, acknowledging both her athletic prowess and her role as a positive force in the community. After Sydney, she received numerous awards and accolades for her contributions to sport and society, including induction into the Sport Australia Hall of Fame. Yet for Cathy, these honors were less about personal glory and more about amplifying the causes she cared about: mental health, Indigenous empowerment, and the promotion of equality through sport. Her humility, authenticity, and commitment to giving back set her apart from many other sports icons. She remained approachable, grounded, and dedicated to the people she represented. Her presence in public life was a reminder that true greatness is measured not only by achievements but by the positive impact one leaves on the lives of others. Today, Cathy Freeman is remembered as one of Australia's most iconic athletes, a trailblazer for Indigenous Australians, and a symbol of perseverance and excellence. Her journey from a young girl running barefoot in Mackay to standing atop the Olympic podium is a story of courage, dedication, and identity. She inspired not only a nation but